She married a millionaire to escape her past, but no one told her the past is the one guest that never needs an invitation. If you saw the pictures from the wedding, you'd think it was the final chapter, not the beginning of another story. Small, tasteful, curated. That's the word people like for my life now. Curated. The ceremony wasn't in a church, not our style. It took place in a glass pavilion attached to one of those old city museums that rich people save and then use twice a year. The light came in from above, soft and flattering, just like the planner promised. There were orchids and white roses, arranged in ways that made them look accidental and therefore more expensive. There was a string quartet, of course. They played things people recognized but couldn't quite name. It made everyone feel cultured without the inconvenience of actually being moved. I wore ivory, but not the full romantic version. At my age, you don't get the big princess dress, not in the circles I move in now. My dress was sleek, long sleeves, clean lines. A woman marrying for the second time, everyone thought. How dignified, how sensible. Her dress my bride's cost more than my first car. Her name is Elise DeVroe. If you read certain magazines, you've probably heard of her. Self-made millionaire, although no one ever really is. Tech investments, early green energy bets, an art foundation. She's the sort of woman who has columns written about her when she buys a painting, or when she cuts a program, or when she decides to sit on a particular board. She looked like she always does, controlled. A dark suit tailored with such precision, it might as well have been a second skin. A silk blouse in a color that cost extra to call by its exact shade. Hair smooth. Makeup immaculate. Smile practiced, but not false. She is very good at appearing exactly as people need her to. She took my hand as I reached the front, and the guests murmured the way guests do when they see two women in their 50s getting married and think. It's both touching and slightly political, but mostly photogenic. "You look beautiful," she said under her breath. "So do you?" I replied. Because it was true and because there are some scripts you don't deviate from. The officiant was a woman from the city registrar's office, brought in early on a Saturday to make this look less like a transaction and more like a sacrament. "We are gathered here," she began, "to witness the union of, I don't know why, but even after all these years." I still flinch slightly when they say my name. Lydia Carr? That's who I now dot on paper. It's simple. Lydia. Educated, discreet, works in arts philanthropy, chairs a literacy charity, appears in the society pages sometimes as the quietly elegant partner of Elise DeVroe, widow of a respectable banker. No scandal attached, just a tasteful amount of grief. Before the registrar could finish the sentence, I felt the ghost of another name move, restless. Under my ribs, dot on a dot, no one in that room had ever called me that. Dot Elise squeezed my hand once, a tiny pulse of reassurance. To anyone else, it would look like an affectionate gesture. I knew what it meant. Breathe. "I, Elise, take you, Lydia," she said later, voice steady enough to sign contracts with. "To be my wife. To share my life, my home, my calendar," she added, and there was a smatter of polite laughter. She was trying. That counts for more than people think. When it was my turn, I said the words without stumbling. I've always been good at speaking other people's languages. "I, Lydia, take you, Elise, to be my wife. To share my life, my home, my whatever the rest of this brings." More polite laughter. Our friends, hers, mostly smiled approvingly. My children watched from the second row, my son's eyes careful, my daughter's lips pressed tight. They like Elise, very much, in fact. They like that I am with someone who can take them to exhibitions and dinners and introduce them to people who make their LinkedIn profiles more interesting. They also know, because children always do, that this is not the same as the love I had before. Before everything fell apart. Before I changed my name, the registrar pronounced us married. There was applause, restrained but warm. Elise kissed me lightly, her hands barely touching my arms. It was a kiss for cameras, tender, appropriate, not the sort that sends rumors spiraling. If you'd asked anyone in that room what they saw, they would have said, Two women who have lived, who have lost, who have chosen each other in the second act. Mature love. Sensible love, safe love. No one would have said escape plan. After the ceremony, there were canapes and champagne on the terrace. The city spread out below us, all glass and stone, and the soft roar of people trying to get somewhere on time. I moved through the clusters of guests on Elise's arm, doing what I've learned to do best, making other people comfortable. This is Lydia, Elise would say. She's the one who saved the library project. Or, she runs the only board I actually enjoy sitting on. Or the one that always made me want to laugh. I'd be completely disorganized without her. They shook my hand. They told me it was wonderful and inspirational that two women like us could marry now. You must have seen so much change, one younger woman said, eyebrows raised with a kind of earnest curiosity that makes you feel like an exhibit. Oh, yes, I said. We've had a few years to practice being shocking. Nobody asked what we'd given up along the way. At one point, Elise drifted away to talk to an investor, and I found myself alone for the first time all day. Alone, but not unobserved. There's a difference. I stepped back into the glass pavilion, supposedly to check on the flowers. Really, to breathe. The room was empty now, chairs cleared, petals scattered on the floor like someone had spilled a secret. Sunlight caught on the glass walls, turning the city outside into a blur. For a moment, it felt like I was standing inside a snow globe someone had just shaken. I walked to the far corner, away from the main doors. My fingers found the inside pocket of my jacket, brushing over the folded rectangle of paper I tucked there that morning. Not a letter. Not a note, a photograph. Old, edges soft, colors faded. Two young women on a bench in a park. One with hair too long for the climate, laughing with her head thrown back. The other leaning toward her, eyes fixed on the laughing mouth, expression soft and shameless. You wouldn't know it was me. Not at first glance. The hair's different, for one. The clothes cheap and bright. The body less carefully contained. But if you looked at the eyes, the laughing ones, you'd recognize something. Or I would. Anyway, when I first became Lydia, I threw almost everything away. Letters, clothes, entire friendships. I moved cities, industries, galaxies of expectation. I cut my hair, changed my walk, trained my voice to be lower, calmer, less likely to betray anything. I kept that photograph. Just that one. Sometimes I wonder if that was my mistake. My one treason against the new life. A relic that kept whispering, remember. From the terrace. Someone laughed. Elise's laugh smooth, practiced, landing exactly where it should in the conversation. I slipped the photo back into my pocket and smoothed my jacket down as if the past could crumple the fabric. When I returned to the terrace, she glanced over, checking. It's a habit she has, born of years in rooms where any misstep can become a headline. She needs to know I'm playing my part, that I'm not going to suddenly scream or confess or faint. I smiled at her, the small, composed smile I've perfected. She relaxed almost imperceptibly. It was our own kind of vow. Later, when the guests had left and the catering staff was dismantling the evidence of celebration, we went home. Home, now, is Elisa's townhouse. Tall, narrow, tasteful. Art on the walls that people recognize. Wine in the cellar that is spoken about instead of simply drunk. My old home, my first home, is a place I don't drive past. Different city, different street, different woman in the window. We climbed the stairs together, shoes in our hands. My feet ached. Her shoulders slumped a little as soon as the door closed behind us. Public posture draining out of her. Well, she said, leaning against the banister. We did it. We did, I said. Any regrets? She asked lightly. It's the kind of joke you're supposed to make after a wedding. It keeps things from getting too earnest. I hesitated a fraction too long. Her eyes sharpened. About the shoes, I said, and she laughed. The tension sanding off. We had talked months before about what this marriage was and wasn't. I'm not looking for fireworks, she'd said. Sitting opposite me in her office, hands wrapped around a mug, instead of a contract for once. I've done that. Twice? I'd like something sustainable, adult, you know? I do, I'd said. I don't have the energy to tear my life apart for passion anymore. Good, she'd said. Then we understand each other. We're good together. We want similar things. The board likes you. My mother likes you, which is a miracle. And you seem to actually enjoy being in the same room as me, which is more than I can say for some of the people I've dated. Ringing endorsement, I teased. She'd gone serious then. I can give you comfort, she'd said. Stability. A partner who won't humiliate you. I won't. Ask you to be in love with me the way you were with your first wife. She'd paused. Or whoever it was back then. I hadn't corrected her. Easier that way, I can give you the same, I'd said. The comfort, the stability, the lack of humiliation. We hadn't spoken about love after that dot now, standing on the landing of the house we were supposed to share. I looked at her and thought, this is what passing looks like, in the end. Not just passing as respectable. Passing as finished. As if there are no ghosts left in the corners. Come on, she said. Let's get you out of that dress before you fuse to it. There were no cinematic moments that night. No passionate declarations, no grand consummations. We are not 20. Our bodies have been through enough dot. We sat on the bed in our night clothes and talked about the honeymoon dates. About schedules. About the upcoming fundraiser for the foundation. We went to sleep on our respective sides of the bed, a careful space between us. Not cold. Not empty, just measured dot lying there in the dark, listening to her breathing. I let mine drift. You'd think, after so much effort, that it would stay in the present. On the new ring on my finger, the new life laid out like a cautious itinerary. Instead, it did what it always does when the house is quiet, and there are no witnesses dot. It went back dot to a different flat. A different bed. A different woman's laugh dot to the life I buried dot to the name. I don't use any more dot to the girl on the park bench in the photograph, whose hand I let go of because staying felt too dangerous. And running felt like the only kind of survival I understood. I turned on my side and faced the wall, slipping my hand under the pillow. My fingers brushed the edge of the photo again, tucked there earlier for reasons I didn't want to examine. Elise? I whispered dot. She made a soft, questioning sound, half asleep. Thank you, I said. For what? She mumbled. For marrying me, I said. For this. She made a noise that could have been acceptance. Or just exhaustion. I lay awake a long time after she drifted off, staring into the dark, listening to the city outside and the quiet inside. From the outside, my life looked dignified, reinvented, stable dot. From the inside, I could feel something else. A pressure. A shift. As if the past side sealed up so carefully it started, very gently, to tap on the lid, not loud. Not yet. Just enough to remind me it was still there dot, waiting dot for its turn dot. The thing about reinvention is that everyone assumes it starts with ambition dot. It doesn't. It starts with fear. Long before. I was Lydia Carr in an ivory dress. I was Anna Morrill in a second-hand coat that smelled faintly of someone else's cigarettes. I was 21, living in a cramped flat above a laundrette. The walls sweated steam and the sound of the machines downstairs was a constant, comforting thrum. I worked at a community theater box office by day, usher by night, occasionally stepping into paint sets when the volunteer crew didn't show up. That's where I met her. Ruth. She was older by a few years. Not much, but enough that she carried herself like someone who'd already decided who she was. She ran a legal advice clinic out of one of the theater's back rooms 3 evenings a week, helping people with housing, benefits, arguments with employers. She had a way of listening that made people feel less ridiculous for needing help. The first time I saw her, she was arguing with the landlord about the state of the toilets. You can't host public events and have plumbing from the Victorian era, she said. Arms crossed, eyebrows doing most of the work. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. You lot in your lawsuits, he grumbled. No one sued anyone in my day. People also died of things curable with soup in your day. she replied. We've moved on. I laughed from my perch behind the ticket window. She turned her head slightly, catching the sound, and our eyes met through the glass. That was it, really? The moment I had a before and an after dot, she started saying hello when she came in. Then lingering. Then buying a ticket to whatever terrible experimental play we were hosting, despite clearly not having the time. What are you doing with your life, Anna? She asked one evening, sitting on the edge of the box office desk after the audience had gone in. This, I said, gesturing at the posters on the wall. You're too smart to spend your life tearing ticket stubs, she said. You could study. Do something where people have to actually listen to you. You stand in a room that smells of mold and tell men with too much power that their lease clauses are illegal, I said. I think you've cornered the market on being listened to. She grinned. Come volunteer, she said. You know everyone. They trust you. We could use that. So I did. I started making tea for anxious strangers, photocopying forms, listening to Ruth explain things with patience and fire in equal measure. We grew closer the way people do when they share work that matters sideways. Jokes between consultations. Shared crisp in the cramped back office. Her hand brushing mine when we passed files. One night, I walked her to the bus stop in the rain. My umbrella flipped inside out in a gust of wind. We both swore. Here, she said, stepping closer, sharing her umbrella with me instead. We were pressed together, shoulders touching, our breath visible in the cold air. Thank you, I said, because gratitude is easier than confession. She looked down at me, she's taller. She always has been, and something softened in her face. Can I ask you something? She said. You usually do, I replied. What are you afraid of? She asked out the answer was so large, I almost choked on it. Everything, I said lightly. Council tax, moths, missing the last bus. I think you're afraid of being seen, she said. I'm standing under a streetlight with a woman who argues with landlords for a living, I said. I think if I were afraid of being seen, I'd have chosen a different hobby. She smiled. I meant properly seen, she said. The bus roared up then, spraying water over the curb. She didn't get on it. Instead, she placed a hand on my arm. Anna, she said. May I? I knew exactly what she was asking. The world had been humming with it for weeks. The space between us had been inching toward this edge. Yes, I said. The kiss was small, at first. Testing. Rain spattering on our faces. Her hand warm on my sleeve. Then I exhaled against her mouth, and everything that had been clenched inside me decided, temporarily, to relax. There it was, the thing I'd suspected and feared and wanted all at once. Not theoretical anymore. Not a story in a book or a whispered rumor about someone else. Mine. We didn't have language. Like, out, and in closet the way people do now. Not really. We had careful and quiet and don't tell your mother. We did anyway. My mother cried. My father went quiet. My brother shrugged and asked if Ruth liked football. Ruth's family did not take it as well. Her parents had opinions about phases and proper girls. She moved out. We got a flat together above a bakery that made the whole building smell like yeast and hoped out we were poor. We were working constantly. We were, in many ways, happy. We learned the choreography of being ourselves in a world that didn't ask nicely for that, don't hold hands on the street, be ready with friend instead of partner at this work event, decide carefully which neighbors get invited in. We also learned the tender rituals that don't make it into movies. Who makes tea when the other had a bad day? Who hates doing dishes more and therefore gets laundry duty forever? Who holds who when the news on the radio makes your stomach twist? For 3 years, I would have said, honestly, that my life was small. But mine. Then came the night that changed everything. The theater, the same one where we'd met, hosted a fundraiser for a housing rights campaign. Ruth was speaking. I was helping with lights and tickets. The crowd was bigger than usual, angrier, more desperate. People had been evicted. Rents had jumped. Bodies pressed into the space, damp with rain and indignation. Somewhere in the second half, someone pulled a fire alarm. At first, we thought it was a prank. Then we smelled smoke. The back stairwell, the one with the bad. Electrics everyone complained about had flames licking up the peeling paint. People panicked. There's no polite way to describe it. They shoved. They yelled. Some slipped on the wet floor. Someone screamed that the front doors were stuck. They weren't. They were just jammed with bodies. I grabbed a fire extinguisher with shaking hands and did what I could. Ruth helped usher people toward the side exits. It was chaos. The kind that feels like time snapped into 1,000 little pieces. In the end, only one person died. Only, as if one is an acceptable number. His name was Thomas Riley, middle-aged, came to every event. Always sat near the front, always asked the same question in a slightly too loud voice. People rolled their eyes at him. His earnestness made them uncomfortable. He died of smoke inhalation in the stairwell. I still see his face sometimes, even when I'm not particularly thinking about that night. The fire brigade came. The police. The landlord. Reporters, when they caught the scent of fury. It should have been a story about negligence. About the landlord ignoring warnings. About failing electrics and blocked exits and too many people in one unsafe space. It wasn't. Within days, it became a story about agitators, about reckless organizers and unsafe gatherings, about people who push things too far. Someone had to be blamed. It was me. Not just me, of course. But my face made sense for the narrative they wanted. I'd been the one on duty at the theater that night. My name on the rota. My signature on the form that said capacity 120 when at least 200 people squeezed in. The landlord produced a version of the form I'd never seen, with my name on it, authorizing more chairs. Who else would have let this happen? His lawyer demanded. She's young, idealistic, connected to these activists. And there it was, in the newspapers, my name, my workplace. My relationship with Ruth, lesbian rights workers' negligence leads to man's death. No one quite said, pervert kills family man, but the implication hung heavy. Ruth tried to fight it. She went to meetings. She spoke to union reps, journalists, anyone who listened. This isn't her fault, she said. She's being scapegoated. The landlord ignored warnings. The council signed off on substandard wiring. The landlord's solicitor hinted very gently that certain allegations might mysteriously evaporate if Ruth stopped making such noise. Label is a serious matter, he said. And you know how courts treat people like you. We'd seen enough cases to know what he meant. If they wanted, they could drag us through the mud for years. Paint us as irresponsible, immoral, dangerous. Ruth came home one night with her shoulders hunched in a way I'd never seen before. They're going to charge you, she said. Health and safety violations. Maybe manslaughter if the family pushes. I didn't do anything differently than we've done for every event, I said. You know that? I know, she said. But they need a name. A face. A story that isn't rich landlord ignored poor tenants. What do we do? I asked. We fight, she said automatically. Then softer, or we run. We sat in silence for a long time. I was angry. At the landlord. At the council. At the world. But mostly, if I'm honest, at how tired I felt. I don't want my parents to see my name in those headlines, I said. They'll break. They might see them anyway, she said. I don't want to be the reason you get disbarred or struck off or whatever they do to people like you who fight too hard. I added. She stared at the wall. You're not my client, she said. She swallowed the word. If I stay, I said slowly, this becomes a fight that eats our whole lives. Appeals, court dates, protests. Every job application after this will come up with that search result. And if you go? She asked. If I go, they'll stop looking at you. They'll call me a coward, a fugitive. They'll tell whatever story they want. but you'll get to keep doing the work. At the time, it felt like a strategy, a way to game a rigged system. Now I see it for what it was, a panicked gamble by two women who thought they had more control than they did. We had a week before formal charges were filed. No one told me that exactly, but Ruth could see the train coming by the way the rails vibrated. "We can leave together," she said. New city. New start. It's 19, not the Stone Age. There are places where two women with no money and a public scandal can just start again. I asked gently, where you can practice law without them Googling you, where my name doesn't come up with manslaughter in the first 10 results. She didn't answer because we both knew the answer. "Let me be the villain this time," I said. "You get to be the good one, the one who tried to stand up and stayed. Maybe that's the only way we can win anything out of this." "You are not a villain," she said fiercely. "Tell that to the Riley family." I whispered we spent that week in a strange limbo, packing a little, unpacking, touching each other more than usual, holding on harder, not quite saying goodbye, but not quite pretending we weren't. On the last night, I left while she was at the clinic. I didn't leave a note. I couldn't think of anything that wouldn't sound like a bad film. I took the small amount of cash we had in the house, the photograph from the park bench, a change of clothes, and the name of a friend of a friend of a friend who owed Ruth a favor in another city. By the time formal charges were filed, Anna Morrill had evaporated in her place. Slowly, painstakingly, hesitantly came Lydia Carr. I cut my hair, bought a suit from a charity shop that almost fit, and took a temp job at an events company. I learned how to write emails with just the right level of warmth. I learned which forks go where. I learned which parts of myself were allowed in public. At first, I thought I'd go back someday, when things calmed down, when the scandal moved on, when the Riley family had some other grief to occupy them. Then years passed. New tragedies filled the papers. Life happened, bills, work, a man who loved me and didn't ask too many questions about my past, 2 children, his sudden death in a car accident. I slipped so fully into Lydia's skin that sometimes I'd go days without hearing my old name inside my own head. But at night, in the quiet, when the house was asleep, I'd take out the photograph. 2 women on a bench. One laughing, one watching. I'd touch the edge of it and think, if I'd stayed. They might have destroyed us. If I'd stayed. Maybe we'd have destroyed ourselves trying to fight. If I'd stayed, would I be here now? It's a useless line of thought. You can't rerun the experiment. You can only wait, knowing that if you've built your life on a foundation that unstable, the tremors will come back someday. You just never know when. Or in what form. The first crack didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like a letterbox. We were 3 months into the marriage when the envelope arrived. Thick paper, no return address. My name and handwriting that pricked something at the back of my brain. Not because I recognized it, because it didn't quite fit. We get a lot of post in that house. Invitations, of course. Catalogs from places that sell things no one needs. Official-looking envelopes for at least legal documents, board papers. Fan mail, occasionally, from people who think millionaires are mythical creatures. This one was addressed to me. Miss Lydia Carr. No and guest. No and partner of Miss Devereaux. Just need. It was a Tuesday. Elise was at a breakfast with her foundation. The housekeeper had the day off. The dog, Elise's rescue spaniel, who tolerated me but adored her, was snoring in a patch of sun on the rug. I stood in the hallway and held the envelope for a moment. Old habits. Always check where things come from. Who might be watching? Then I slid a finger under the flap. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded twice. No letterhead. Just text, neatly typed. Dear Miss Carr, I am writing in relation to an ongoing review of historic cases involving public safety at entertainment venues. We are attempting to contact Miss Anna Morrill, formerly of the Crescent Community Theater, regarding an incident that occurred on date. Records indicate that you moved to current city shortly after this incident. And there are administrative overlaps that suggest you may be the same individual under a different name. If this is not the case, please accept our apologies for the intrusion. If it is, I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. We have obtained new evidence that may impact the narrative surrounding that event. You were not, and are not under criminal investigation at this time. Sincerely, Daniel Keene, investigative reporter, The Herald. I read it twice. 3 times. The word swam a little, then REORGNIAZD. Historic cases. Crescent Community Theater. New evidence. Not under criminal investigation. My first reaction was fury. Who keeps these records? Who thinks it's acceptable to put a letter like this through someone's door without so much as a phone call first? The audacity of reaching nearly 3 decades into the past and pulling out a name I thought I'd buried. My second reaction was fear. If I don't respond, what happens? Does he assume he's wrong and move on? Or does he start digging harder? What if he talks to people? What if he finds my children? What if he finds Elise? My third reaction was the oldest. Anna, on paper. In my house, I folded the letter carefully, twice, the way it had arrived, and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I sat down on the stairs. The dog lifted her head, stared at me, then patted over and put her chin on my knee. I scratched behind her ears mechanically, my mind running through scenarios like bad television. My phone buzzed. A message from Elise. How's your morning, Mrs. D? The nickname still felt like a borrowed coat. Quiet, I typed back. Mail, laundry, existential dread. You know, she replied with a laughing emoji and be there for dinner. Can we talk about the gala speech? Need your edit brain. Normal. Safe. The life I'd built. I went into the kitchen, made tea, put the letter on the table, and stared at it some more. If there was new evidence, part of me wanted to know. To hear that the official version, the one that had painted me careless, reckless, was being challenged. To finally have someone in print say what Ruth had tried to tell strangers in dismal offices all those years ago. That the landlord and the council had more to answer for than a girl with a key and a clipboard. But new evidence doesn't always vindicate. Sometimes it discovers new things to condemn you for. When Elise came home that evening, she dropped her bag by the door and kicked off her heels with relief. I swear, she said, if one more 28-year-old hedge fund graduate asks me if green investment can be sexy, I'm going to start throwing kale at them. She seemed lighter than usual. The foundation event had gone well. A grant had come through. One of her riskier bets had finally paid off. I waited until we were sitting at the table. Plates of something beautifully arranged between us. Before I slid the envelope toward her, a letter came today, I said. She glanced at it, then at me. The old-fashioned kind? Should we have it framed? Just read it, I said. She did. Her face didn't change much, but her thumb pressed a little harder into the paper as she reached the middle. Is this true? She asked quietly when she reached the end. Yes, I said. More or less. And you are amoral? I was, I said. Once. She folded the letter and aligned it precisely with the edge of the table, another habit she has when she's thinking. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. There it was. Not shouted, not wounded, just asked. Because Lydia is easier, I said. For everyone. That's not an answer, she replied. It's the only one I have right now. I said. We sat there, 2 women nearly 60, with a plate of cooling food between us and 2 names on the table. The one I'd chosen and the one the past refused to forget. Tell me, she said finally. All of it. Not tonight, necessarily. But soon, before some journalist thinks they have the right to tell it for you. The thing with Elise is, she doesn't deal in sentiment much. But she does deal obsessively in control. If we're going to have a scandal, she added, I'd like it to be on our terms. I almost laughed. Almost. It may not be a scandal, I said. He says there's new evidence. That I'm not under investigation. She nodded slowly. Journalists don't dig in old graves for their health, she said. He thinks there's a story. The question is, are you ready to be in it again? I thought of Ruth, standing in that smoky stairwell, yelling at people to move. I thought of Thomas Riley, lying in the hospital bed with his family around him, the machine hissing above his head. I don't know, I said. I don't know if I can survive seeing my name in that context again. We can keep the lid on some of it, she said. Legal letters, PR, I have people. I know you do, I said. But this isn't a product recall. This is my life, or the part of it I ran from. She looked at me for a long moment. I married you, she said slowly, knowing there were parts of you I'd never see. That's true for everyone. But I did assume your name was real. It is now, I said. It's just not the only one. That's the thing about past, she said, apropos of nothing. They never stay where you put them. You think you've filed them away and then someone comes along with a Freedom of Information request. I smiled despite myself. Only you, I said, would turn my trauma into a records management metaphor. Everyone needs a hobby, she said. We sat there in the pool of light from the kitchen pendant lamp. The rest of the house in soft darkness. Will you talk to him? She asked at last. This Daniel Keem? I think I have to, I said. If I don't, he'll go looking elsewhere. And I'd rather the story came from me than from someone who half remembers a headline from 30 years ago. Then we'll do it properly, she said. In my office, with our solicitor present, and with clear boundaries about what he can and can't print. I repeated. She shrugged. You married me, Lydia. This is what I bring, resources. Annoying competence. The ability to make men in suits nervous. Let me be useful. There was something almost tender in that dot all my life. I'd been the one making myself useful. The problem solver. The fixer. The one who quietly smoothed things over so other people could keep their illusions. It hadn't occurred to me that someone like Elise might see me as someone worth defending, rather than an asset to maintain. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet, she replied. Wait until we see what he has. The meeting with Daniel was set for a week later. In the meantime, the letters sat in my drawer next to the photograph. Two ghosts. One on paper, one in my head. At night, lying next to Elise, listening to the dog snore downstairs. I imagined walking into the office to meet him. I imagined his questions. I imagined saying the name out loud. Ruth. The name I hadn't spoken in years, the one that did not appear on the letter, which is why I was unprepared for the way the past chose to actually walk back into my life. Not on the day of the meeting. Not in some grand cinematic confrontation, but on an ordinary afternoon in the blandest possible place. The lobby of Elise's office. Elise's office building is one of those sleek glass and steel creations that architects design when they want people to think they're looking at the future. Tall, reflective, with a lobby that smells faintly of coffee and money. I'd gone in early that day, ahead of the meeting with Daniel, to review some foundation documents. Elise liked having me there when she dealt with tricky conversations. She said my presence lowered the blood pressure of the room. I was sitting on one of the soft, low sofas in the lobby, scrolling idly through emails. When the revolving door whooshed, I didn't look up at first. People are always coming and going. Consultants, assistants, men who think their shoes make them invisible. Then I heard a voice at the reception desk. Hi, I'm here to see Lydia Carr. Or she might be using another name now. It's been a while. My spine recognized it before my brain did. I looked up. She had aged. Of course she had. So had I. Her hair, once dark and stubborn, now had a dignified streak of gray at the temples. She wore glasses-thin frames that made her look like exactly who she was, a woman who read more documents than was healthy. Her posture was straighter than it used to be, but there was still that slight forward tilt, as if she was always leaning toward the next thing. Ruth. Her eyes moved across the lobby. scanning, and for a second I considered ducking behind the nearest potted plant. Old habits. Then she saw me. The world narrowed. She smiled. That same crooked, half-incredulous smile she used to have when we found something unbelievably cheap at the market. Then it faltered, replaced by something harder to name. "Hello, Anna?" She said, it was like being slapped and embraced at once. Everyone else in my life called me Lydia now, even the ones who loved me. Hearing my old name in her mouth felt like someone had opened a door I'd bricked up. "Ruth." I said. The receptionist glanced between us, sensing something, but to her credit, not asking. "You know each other?" She said cautiously. "Yes," Ruth said. "We do." "For a very long time," I added. The receptionist nodded, relieved to transfer the emotional weight to someone else. "Would you like to use one of the private meeting rooms?" She offered. "Yes," we said at the same time. Inside the small room glass walls. A table, 4 chairs, a jug of water. We sat facing each other. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "You look..." "Well," she said at last. "Married," I said, forcing a flicker of humor. "That's the word people are using." "I saw," she said. "The article. You looked expensive. Compliment." I asked. "Observation," she said. Silence again. "The kind charged with decades. What are you doing here?" I asked. It came out sharper than I meant. "I'm here with Daniel," she said. "The journalist." "I'm legally advising him on some of the cases he's looking into." When he mentioned a theater fire and a missing woman named Anna Morrill, I thought, that sounds familiar. "And you didn't think maybe I had a reason for missing?" I said. "I thought you might," she said. "I also thought you might like the chance to stop missing if the story's finally changing." My chest tightened. "You could have called," I said. "Written something." "I did," she said. "At first. For years. Letters to your parents' address. Messages left with old colleagues. I never got a response." I looked down at my hands. "They never told me," I said. "My parents. They thought they were protecting me. From you. From the world. I thought your silence was your choice. And I thought yours was yours," she said. "We were both wrong." She leaned forward slightly. "Anna Lydia, I didn't come here to make a scene. Or to punish you. Lord knows life's done enough of that without my help. I came because Daniel has documents you should see. Statements, reports, things we didn't have back then." "What kind of things?" I asked. "Proof," she said. "That the landlord's maintenance logs were falsified. That the council inspector signed off on safety certificates without visiting. That someone anonymous, possibly more than one someone, warned them about the wiring months before the fire and they ignored it." I swallowed. "So, they might finally stop saying it was my fault." "They should never have said that in the first place," she said. "That's not the same as the world agreeing," I said. "No," she conceded. "But it's a start." She looked at me carefully. "Why did you run?" she asked. "Not the story you told yourself. The real reason." I laughed quietly. "Those two are the same, I think." "Humor me," she said. "I was afraid," I said simply. "Not just of prison. Of being reduced to the worst thing that ever happened in that stairwell. Of never being anything other than that girl who killed that man. Of watching you get dragged through it because you loved me. I thought if I left, the damage could be contained." "And did it work?" she asked. "No," I said. "Ruined my life too. Just in a tidier way." She breathed out. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" I asked. "You weren't the one who left me standing in a flat with the walls closing in." "I wasn't the one who left that flat," she said. "But I was the one who agreed we didn't have many options. I was the one who didn't insist we fight harder. I was the one who let fear write the script. I've spent 20-odd years wondering if there was a version where I grabbed your hand and said, 'Fine, let them come. We'll stand there together and see who blinks.' Would we have survived?" I asked. Probably, she said. Just not as the people we were then. We sat in that for a moment. How is your life? I asked, because it felt strange not to. Messy, she said. Good, in parts. I work with tenants' unions. Legal aid. I shout at landlords for a living. Some things never change. Anyone? I trailed off. Anyone special? She finished. Yes, for a while. A woman named Corinne. We were together 10 years. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. I thought, well, that's that. Then. My quote is done. I'm sorry, I said. Me too, she said. And now you. Married to a millionaire. Fancy that. She's kind, I said. In her way. We're good together. We understand the rules. Do you love her? She asked. Not the way I loved you, I said. Or Corinne, but I care for her. I don't want to hurt her. There's the rules again, she said gently. Before I could reply, there was a knock at the glass wall. Elise stood there, impeccably dressed, expression polite but assessing. Behind her, a man in his 40s with a notebook and a messenger bag Daniel, presumably Elise, opened the door. Am I interrupting? She asked. Yes, Ruth and I said simultaneously. Elise raised an eyebrow. Good, she said. I'd hate to miss anything important. Ruth, I said, as much for Elise's benefit as anyone's, this is my friend from before. From before, Ruth echoed, standing to offer her hand. Ruth Bennett. Ah, Elise said, taking it. The one who haunts the old stories. Usually the landlord's nightmares, Ruth said. But occasionally other people's too. They shook hands. Two women who had shaped my life in different eras, evaluating each other like competitors in some quiet, invisible contest. So, Elise said, looking between us, shall we talk about the past like adults? Or shall we let the journalist write whatever version sells? Adults, I said. Adults, Ruth agreed. Excellent, Elise said. Come upstairs. I've had coffee brought in. And our solicitor is on standby if anyone gets too clever. She held the door for us. And I walked out into the corridor between my present and my past. I had spent decades telling myself, those two versions of me could never be in the same room. Now they were about to sit at the same table, and I had no plan at all for what would happen next. We met in one of Elise's smaller conference rooms, small by her standards, which still meant a long table, a framed abstract painting, and a view over the city that made everything below look unthreatening. Daniel Keene was already there. Laptop open, notes spread out in a way that suggested both chaos and careful thought. He stood when we came in, slightly flustered at the weight of the company he suddenly found himself in. Miss Devroe, he said, shaking Elise's hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Thank my wife, she said smoothly. It's her story you're interested in? He turned to me, eyes sharp. Miss Carr or Morrill? Lydia is fine, I said. For now. He nodded, understanding more than I'd said. Thank you for coming. Ruth took a seat beside me. Elise sat at the head of the table as if chairing a meeting. It helped. I'd been in enough rooms with her in that position to know she takes care of the people on her left and right. Let's be clear about something. She said to Daniel, we're not here to help you sell papers. We're here to hear what you have and then decide what, if anything, we're willing to contribute. Understood? Yes, he said. And for what it's worth, I'm not looking for a villain here. I'm looking for the truth. Truth has a way of making villains anyway, Ruth muttered. He opened a file. The Crescent Community Theater fire, he said. Officially blamed on an electrical fault and overcrowding. Capacity exceeded. Emergency exits partially blocked. One fatality. Several minor injuries. And one lesbian scapegoat. Ruth added. Daniel glanced at her, then continued. The landlord, a Mr. Colin Marsh, claimed that he had provided adequate safety measures and that the theater staff had disregarded them. He produced documents with signatures from staff confirming they'd read the safety guidelines. One of those signatures was yours, Miss Morrill. I didn't sign anything like that, I said reflexively. I know, he said. We had a handwriting analyst compare the signature on that form with your actual signature from employment records. It's not a match. My throat went dry. They forged it. Someone did, he said. We don't know who personally, but we know it wasn't you. He handed me a photocopy of the document. Seeing my name, written in someone else's approximation of my hand, made my skin crawl. Additionally, he said, we found maintenance reports from an electrician who did some work at the theater 3 months before the fire. He flagged the wiring in the back stairwell as a hazard and recommended replacement. The landlord acknowledged receipt but didn't act. Instead, he filed a false certificate with the council stating the work had been done. Can you prove that? Elise asked, leaning forward slightly. We have his original quote. The electrician's invoice and bank records indicating payment was never made, Daniel said. We also have an internal note from the council inspector who is supposed to check the site. It includes the line, Marsh assures me everything is in order, no need to make a special trip. Ruth snorted. Translation? I can't be bothered, and he's a mate. And me? I asked quietly, where do I fit in this now? In the original narrative, Daniel said, you were the convenient face, young, politically active, queer. The landlord's solicitor floated, earning to the press early. Junior staff member failed to control crowd. That phrase appeared in 3 separate articles within the first week. We traced them back to the same initial source, a legal representative for the property owner, so they decided I was the villain before any investigation. I said, pretty much, he said. The council inquiry focused on operational failings on the night, not on structural negligence. Health and safety interviewed you once. You didn't have legal representation. The union rep who tried to fight for you was quietly sidelined, his funding cut that year. Ruth's jaw clenched. I remember, she said. We thought it was bad luck. It wasn't, Daniel said. It was deliberate pressure. The landlord had friends on the council. They had no interest in a story about how they'd ignored warnings. It was much cleaner to say we were let down by a reckless organizer, one who, conveniently, didn't stick around to defend herself. I left before they charged me, I said. That must have looked very helpful for their version. It did, he said. It turned you from scapegoat to fugitive in the public mind. Easier for everyone except you. And the Riley family? I asked. Do they know any of this? We've spoken to them, he said. Showed them some of the documents. They're angry. Not at you. At Marsh. At the council. At the way they were told a story that made it easier to grieve but harder to demand accountability. I exhaled slowly. The air in the room felt thicker. So why now? Elise asked. Why dig this up 30 years later? We're doing a series on historical safety failures and how patterns repeat, he said. Grenfell! Stadium crushes. Factory fires. Different details. Same dynamics. Poor or marginalized people paying the price for someone else's corner cutting. And queer women thrown under the bus for good measure, Ruth added. That too, he said. When I saw the combination of factors in your case of overcrowding, bad wiring, a landlord with council connections, and a young lesbian organizer held up as the face of it, it fit the pattern. I wanted to see if there was more beneath the official record. There was. He closed the file. From a strictly journalistic standpoint, he said, this is a story about how blame is assigned and how truth gets buried. From a human standpoint, it's also a story about you. Do you want to name me? I asked. Not without your consent, he said. We can anonymize. Or we can write about you under your current name if you're willing. Or not mention you at all, though that would feel like continuing the silence. I looked at Elise. Her face was composed. But I could see the muscle in her jaw working. If this comes out, she said, People will connect the dots. A woman in my position marrying someone with this in her past, it'll raise questions. I know, I said. I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you, she said, surprising me. I am married an adult. Adults have pasts. I am angry at the idea that the first time the world hears about this, it might come through a headline instead of from you. You want me to own it, I said. I want you to choose it, she said. Not have it thrown at you. Ruth watched us both, something like envy and sorrow mingling in her eyes. The charges were never actually laid, Daniel said. You disappeared before that stage. Legally speaking, you're not guilty of anything. If anything, you're a victim in this. Try telling that to the part of my brain that reads comment sections, I said. He smiled sympathetically. Point taken. So, Elise said, turning to me more fully. What do you want to do? There it was. The question I had walked around my whole adult life. Usually I translated it into something more palatable. What do you want for dinner? What do you want the event to look like? What do you want to wear? This was bigger and scarier and somehow simpler. I want my name back, I said slowly. I want to stop being afraid of opening my own front door. I want the Rileys to know it wasn't my fault. I want the council to have to admit they failed. I want Marsh to lose sleep, even this late. And the price? Elise asked. Public scrutiny, I said. Questions. People who will say I ran because I was guilty, not because I was scared. People who will think my life now, this house, this marriage, are proof I got away with it. And your marriage? She asked quietly. I don't know, I said. I don't know what this will do to us. Ruth shifted. It shouldn't have to do anything, she said. You're not the criminal here. Shit isn't how this world works, Elise said mildly. I have shareholders who panic when my shoe choice changes. They will have opinions about this. Then let them, Ruth said. Maybe some of them were at that council meeting 30 years ago. Elise gave her a look that was half irritation, half admiration. Would you stand with me? I asked Elise if I did this. If I let Daniel use my real name, if I said, yes, that was me, and here's what actually happened. Yes, she said. Without hesitation, it startled me. You would risk your reputation. I said, I'd be risking a reputation built on my judgment, she said. If I can't stand by the woman I chose to marry when things get complicated, then my judgment is worse than I thought. And I've put far too much effort into my image to let it be that flimsy. Ruth smiled faintly. She's good, she murmured. She is, I agreed. Daniel cleared his throat. If you're willing, he said, I'd like to record an interview. On the record. You can review quotes. You can veto anything that misrepresents. I don't promise to write a puff piece, but I do promise to write a fair one. And what about legal ramifications? Elise asked. For Marsh, for the council. We're sharing our findings with the appropriate oversight bodies, he said. There's unlikely to be criminal charges this long after, but reputations can still be dented. Positions can still be lost. Processes can still be changed. So justice, I said, but delayed. Justice delayed, he said, is rarely justice denied. It's just different. Tastes more like medicine than dessert. Appealing image, Ruth said. You should work in PR. I prefer annoying people, he said. We laughed lightly, all of us. It took the edge off. Okay, I said in the end. We'll do it. I'll talk. On the record. Under my old name. And your new one? Elise asked. And my new one, I said. I'm tired of choosing between them as if they're mutually exclusive. Ruth's hand brushed mine under the table. A fleeting contact. Thank you. A reassurance. As we wrapped up, Daniel gathered his papers. One more question, he said as we stood. Purely personal. You don't have to answer. That's always a worrying preface, I said. Do you regret running? He asked. Back then. given everything you know now? I thought about the flat above the bakery. The machines rumbling, the window rattling in the wind. Ruth asleep beside me, her hand flung over her head. The letterbox, years later, with a different letter. Yes, I said. And no, I regret the hurt it caused. The distance. The way it made me small. But I also know that the girl I was had very few tools and even less power. She chose the only thing she could see that might keep everyone from drowning. She was wrong about some things. Right about others. I can't hate her for that. That's a better answer than most people give, he said. Most people haven't had 30 years to rehearse it. I replied he left with Ruth to prepare the legal framing around his article. Elise stayed behind, staring out the window. You're not what I expected, she said quietly. In what sense? I asked. When I heard there was a past, she said. I imagined something romantic. A tragic love affair. A betrayal. Not a building with bad wiring and a dead man and a cowardly council. I contain multitudes, I said dryly. She smiled. Apparently you do. She turned to me. I married you, she repeated, knowing there were closed doors. I didn't expect one of them to open onto a courtroom, but I'm glad it's opening. For your sake and for yours? I asked. We'll see, she said. It may make me more interesting at dinner parties. You already are, I said. She looked at me, really looked, in a way she didn't often have time for. Tell me the rest tonight, she said. Not for the journalist. For me, for us. Before the world decides what this means. I'd like to hear what it means to you. It was in its own way the most romantic thing she'd ever said to me. Not, I love you. But I want to know who I'm really sharing a house with. I'm willing to hear it even if it complicates my life. That night, in our kitchen, we talked. I told her about Ruth, about the kiss under the bus stop, about the note I didn't leave, about the decades of pretending it had been necessary, rather than just the only option I'd been able to see. She listened. She asked good questions. She didn't flinch when I admitted I still thought about Ruth, that I had married her in part because being with a woman like her felt like a way to prove to myself that I hadn't run forever. You could have told me before we signed the papers. She said once. I know, I said. I didn't know how. Well, she said, we know now. And that, as it turned out, was when the real test of our marriage began, not when the article came out. Not when Marsh was forced to resign from some advisory board or other. Not when the Riley family gave an interview saying they never blamed me as much as the paper said. They did not know. The real test came quietly. In the nights after, when the past, having finally been spoken aloud, refused to go back to being a bedtime story. People imagine that crises in marriages arrive with slammed doors. In reality, they usually arrive with quiet questions. The article ran on a Sunday. Big enough to matter. Small enough not to knock wars or elections off the front page. A 2-page spread in the features section with a photo of the theater as it is now a gym, predictably. No photo of me. At my insistence. The fire that nearly repeated itself, the headline read. The subheading. How blame, fear, and politics obscured the real causes of a deadly night. They used my real name once. In the middle, Anna Morrill, now living under a different name. Agreed to speak to us on the condition that we focus on the system. Not on her. They told the story well, fairly. Marsh came off badly. The council worse. I came off as what I suppose I really was. A young woman out of her depth in a system eager for a scapegoat. The Riley family's quotes made me cry. We were angry, Maureen Riley said. Of course we were. Our Tom went out for a meeting and never came home. But we were angry at the people who ran the building, not the girl tearing tickets. We always thought she got a raw deal. I hadn't known that. It helped more than I expected. There were, predictably, some nasty comments online. But there were also messages from people who had been at the theater that night, saying they remembered the panic, the blocked staircase, the faulty lights. One wrote, I saw you trying to help. I never believed it was your fault. Ruth printed those out and stuck them on her kitchen wall. She later told me the week after the article. Elise and I found ourselves orbiting each other more carefully. She had calls from her PR team, from a few board members, from a journalist or two who suddenly remembered they had my number. Are you concerned this will affect your philanthropic credibility? One asked her on live radio. On the contrary, she said coolly. I'm proud that my wife has always been on the side of people trying to make things safer, even when the system punished her for it. That's quite a statement, the host said. Yes, she replied. You should write it down. At home, though she was quieter, one night we were in bed, both reading her a dense book on the future of energy. Me a novel that had been on my bedside table for months when she set hers down. Do you miss her? She asked. Who? I said, though I knew. Ruth, she said. Yes, I said. In some ways. Not in the same way I did when I thought she was gone forever. It's different now, less frantic. But yes, do you love her? She asked. I put my book down too. Yes, I said. In that deep, old, sedimentary way. Like a river that's changed course, but still remembers where it used to run. And me? She asked. Her voice was even. Too even. I care about you, I said. I respect you. I feel safe with you. I enjoy your company. I don't lie awake at night worrying you'll disappear or get arrested or die of something no one diagnosed in time. That's not quite the same as love, she said. No, I said. It isn't. She stared at the ceiling. I told myself when we married, she said slowly, that at our age, love is a bonus. That companionship, shared values, mutual support, that's what matters. That we both had our wild years, our great loves. That a second marriage is about choosing not to be alone, not about choosing to set yourself on fire again. It is, I said. Mostly. And now? She asked. And now I'm not sure it's enough, I said, because anything else would have been cowardice. She closed her eyes briefly. I appreciate your honesty, she said. I don't particularly enjoy it, but I appreciate it. I didn't know any of this when we married, I said. Not properly. I'd buried it so deep I thought it was just geology, part of the landscape, not active fault lines. And the article was the earthquake, she said. And Ruth, I said. She turned her head to look at me. Do you want to be with her? She asked. No anger? Just the question. I don't know if that's an option, I said. We're not the same people. We both have lives, responsibilities, grief. It's not as simple as rewinding and picking up where we left off. But if it were an option? She pressed. Yes, I said. I would want to see if there's anything still alive there. Beyond nostalgia. She nodded once. Thank you, she said, for not lying to me. I have lied, I said. By omission. For years. I married someone called Lydia, she said. I'm only now beginning to understand how many other names were in that room. I'm sorry, I said, for not bringing them with me earlier. She considered that. I'm not blameless in this, she said. I like that you were finished, polished. I like that you didn't ask anything of me that disrupted my routines. I like that I could put you in a dress and take you to a gala and know exactly how the evening would go. I didn't ask what you had to cram into a box to fit that role. That doesn't make you responsible for my choices, I said. No, she said. But it makes me complicit in the illusion. We lay there in the dark, the quiet humming between us. What do you want? I asked her. Honestly. She was silent for a long time. I want someone who's here, she said finally. Not partly in a theater 30 years ago. Not half in love with the idea of a woman who left. I want to be chosen, not settled for. You were chosen, I said, in the sense that I made a choice. A careful one. Yes, she said. And I don't regret it. But I'm not sure it's fair to either of us to pretend that this can continue unchanged now that the past is walking around in the present tense. What are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying we might need to. Renegotiate, she said. What this marriage is, or whether it should be one. The word hung there. Divorce, dissolution, ending. I don't want to hurt you, I said. It sounded weak, even to my own ears. Hurt is not avoidable, she said. Not at our age. The question is whether we choose the kind that leads somewhere honest, or the kind that just festers quietly until one of us dies. You're very good at making a moral reckoning sound like a board decision, I said. It is one, she said. We're the board. The two of us. We get to decide whether this arrangement still makes sense. What does your PR team say? I asked, half joking. They say we can spin anything, she said. They're wrong? We both laughed. It helped. Do you? Want to leave? I asked. The child in me, the one who watched her father walk out once and never come back, braced. No, she said. I don't want to leave my own house, or my dog, or my life. I also don't want to keep you here if you're always looking over your shoulder at a door in another city. I'm not, I began. You are, she said gently. You may not mean to, but you are. She sat up, tucking her legs under her. Here's what I propose, she said. We take some time. Not a dramatic break. Just space. You go stay somewhere else for a few weeks. See Ruth, if you want. See who you are when you're not managing my calendar and monitoring my media mentions. See whether what you feel is about her, about the past, or about you finally needing to live as all of yourself. And you? I asked. I will see who I am without you smoothing my edges, she said. Whether I actually like being alone as much as I tell people I do. Whether I'm clinging to this because of love, habit, or fear of public opinion. This feels like surrender, I said. This is the opposite of surrender, she said. This is choosing to actually look at what we've built instead of assuming it's solid because the foundations were expensive. I swallowed. People will talk, I said. They always do, she replied. Let them. We've both survived worse. What do we tell them? I asked. The truth, she said. As much as we can stomach. That we're reassessing. That the past has a way of complicating the present. That we're trying not to be cowards in our 50s just because we were forced to be in our 20s. I lay back down. I'm scared, I admitted. So am I, she said. But I'd rather be scared and honest than numb and respectable. She turned off the light. We didn't touch that night. The next morning, she made coffee for both of us. She kissed my cheek before she left for a meeting, the way she always does. But we both knew something had shifted. Marriage, I realized, is not just a vow you make once. It's a series of choices you keep making, and sometimes, if you want to be able to keep choosing each other, you have to pause long enough to ask, is this still the right thing? Or are we just afraid of what happens if we admit it isn't? I didn't move out dramatically. There were no suitcases slammed shut, no taxes, idling impatiently outside. I packed a small bag. Left most of my things where they were. Took my laptop, a few changes of clothes, the photograph, the letter, and a tin of tea I liked. The essentials. I've booked you a flat, Elise said. Short term, furnished, near the park you like. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know, she said. But if you'd chosen somewhere terrible, I'd have worried about you being miserable and made bad decisions out of that worry. This way, I can worry less and make good ones. You remain frighteningly reasonable, I said. It's my fatal flaw, she replied. We stood in the hallway, the dog weaving around our legs, confused. I'll still be at the foundation meetings, I said. And the literacy board. And the gala. This isn't an erasure, she said. I know. We're not pretending we don't know each other. We're just pretending publicly that we're giving each other room to breathe. Do we tell the children? I asked. Yes, she said. They're not fools. They'll know something's off if you suddenly develop a passion for studio living. We sat them down that weekend. My son, my daughter, Elise's niece, who might as well be hers, we're not divorcing. I said carefully. We're taking space to think, to decide what we want this to be. Is this because of the article? My daughter asked. It's because of everything, I said. The article, the past, the fact that Mom married in a name she hadn't shared with me, the fact that I'm realizing I may have asked her to fit into something that didn't quite fit. You still love each other? My son asked Elise. I care deeply about your mother, she said. I respect her. I'm proud of her. Love is complicated. We're trying not to lie about it. They didn't like it. They asked practical questions. Where would I live? Would holidays be weird? Should they choose sides? You don't have to choose sides, I said. This isn't a war. It feels like a divorce, my daughter said bluntly. It might become one, Elise said. We don't know yet. If it does, we'll do it in a way that doesn't use you as weapons or bargaining chips. That's the only promise we can make. It wasn't the reassurance they wanted. It was, however, true. Meanwhile, the world moved on. Marsh resigned quietly from a minor advisory role on some city committee. The council issued a statement about historic failings and lessons learned. There were murmurs of an internal review. No one went to prison. No one lost their pension. It was, in the way these things often are, deeply unsatisfying. Ruth called me one evening from her kitchen, the clatter of plates in the background. We got a letter, she said, from the oversight body. They're reopening some of the old inspection files. Might be too late to do much, but it's something. It's not enough, I said. It won't ever be, she replied. That's the thing about injustice. Time doesn't make it smaller. It just makes it further away. The best we can do now is make sure the next Inga doesn't get scapegoated the same way. Is there a next Anna? I asked. There's always a next someone, she said. That's why I still do what I do. And me? I said, what do I do now? Whatever you want, she said. For the first time in your life, maybe. What if I don't know what that is? I asked. Then we find out, she said. We met more often, Ruth and I coffee at first. Then walks in the park. No grand declarations. No dramatic embraces. We were careful. Not just for Elise's sake, but for ours. We're too old to blow up our lives for a fantasy. Ruth said once, sitting on a bench, watching a dog chase a ball. If we're going to do anything, it has to be because of who we are now, not who we were. Who are you now? I asked. Someone who snores when she's tired and can't eat spicy food after 7, she said. Someone who has lost more people than she cares to count and still thinks it's worth getting attached. Someone who hates musicals and loves terrible crime dramas. And you. Someone who alphabetises her spices, I said. Who still skips certain songs because they remind her of stairwells. Who can run a board meeting but gets nervous answering unknown numbers. Who married a good woman for the wrong reasons. You married a good woman for some of the right reasons, she said. Companionship, safety, she's not? Nothing. No, I said. She isn't. I kept going to therapy. I talked about guilt, about shame, about survival. I admitted that part of my reinvention had been useful. That Lydia had given my children a stable home, my work some sense of purpose. At least a partner she could rely on. Justice had been done, such as it was. My name had been cleared in print, if not in every mind that had once judged me. The legal consequences were over. The emotional ones lingered. Sometimes I would wake in my new flat, in the quiet, and feel the urge to put my old name on something. To write Anna on the back of an envelope just to see it in ink. Sometimes I'd dial my parents' number, long since disconnected out of habit. Grief like injustice, doesn't obey timetables. One afternoon, I met Daniel for a coffee to go over some follow-up questions. I've had a few inquiries, he said. Other outlets want your contact details. A podcast. A documentary maker. A law journal. I don't want to become a professional victim, I said. Good, he said. Because it doesn't pay well. I want my life to be more than the worst night of it, I said. Then let this be a chapter, not the whole book, he said. You've done what you can here. You've told the truth. That's more than most people manage. Is it ever enough? I asked. For you? He said, I don't know. You have to decide that. For the story? Yes, we've done it justice. Justice. Such a big word for such uneven outcomes. When the oversight body finally issued its report, it made the tiniest ripple. Historic safety failures acknowledged, the headline said. Buried on page 7, they mentioned the electrician's warnings. The council inspector's negligence. Marsh's falsified documents. They did not mention my name. It was oddly satisfying. I wasn't in the story. Anymore. It belonged to the systems and the men who had built them. Where it should have been all along. My part was SURVIVORSHIP. Learning to accept that sometimes closure doesn't arrive with a bang. It arrives with a PDF and a sentence that says, we regret that more was not done at the time. I printed it. Not because I needed it, but because it felt like something the girl in the theater would have wanted to hold. Then I folded it and put it in the drawer next to the photograph. Not as an anchor. As a record, proof that, however late, the truth had eventually made it onto the page. When you're young, you imagine the big choices will be obvious. Quit the job or stay. Leave the town or don't. Say, I love you, or keep it to yourself. Later, you learn that most choices come disguised as little ones. Reply to this message or let it slide. Go to this coffee or cancel. Stay the night or catch the last train home. This one sat somewhere in between. It came to a head on a Sunday morning. The sort of gray, damp morning this country specializes in. I was standing in the queue at the market, buying tomatoes that cost too much because they were heritage, when my phone buzzed. 2 messages. From Elise, lunch. Just us. Need to talk. From Ruth. Walk by the river. It's finally not raining sideways. I stared at the screen. There it was. Not dramatic. Not framed in neon. But real. 2 women. 2 lives. 2 versions of myself. The safe one. The honest one. It's not that Elise was dishonest. She wasn't, but the person I was with her had become partial, selective, the version that fit her world. With Ruth. I risked becoming whole. I walked out of the market and sat on a bench. The tomatoes in my lap. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. In the end. I replied to both. To Elise. Yes. Your place? To Ruth. After lunch. By the bridge at 4? I could have pretended that this meant I was postponing the choice. In reality, it meant I was finally going to make it. Lunch with Elise was normal, almost. She'd made a salad that would have looked at home in a food magazine. We sat at the kitchen island, the dog at our feet. How is the flat? She asked. Small, I said. Quiet. The tap in the bathroom sings when you turn it on. That's either charming or a plumbing disaster waiting to happen, she said. We talked about work. The foundation. The latest board drama. My son's career plans. Her niece's new girlfriend. Eventually, though, the talking around ran out. So, she said, setting down her fork. Where are we? I took a breath. Somewhere in between, I said. Not quite married. Not quite not. Do you want to come back? She asked. To this house. To this life. Knowing what you know now about yourself. About the past. I looked around. The art on the walls. The neat rows of cookbooks. The shoes by the door that weren't mine. This had become as familiar as my childhood home in its own way. I love this house, I said. I love the work we've done together. I love not having to explain to strangers why my life with you makes sense. And me? She asked. Direct, as always. I love you, I said. In a way. As a friend. As a partner in logistics. As a fellow adult trying to navigate a ridiculous world. I don't love you the way you deserve to be loved by a wife. Not in the way that makes this ring. I tap the band on my finger, feel like the right symbol. She winced slightly. That's honest, she said. I've spent so much of my life being careful, I said. Not upsetting things. Not making trouble, it feels wrong now to build the rest of my years on that. And Ruth, she said. What about her? I asked, though we both knew. Do you see a future there? She said, not the past. Not the fantasy. The real present tense her. Yes, I said. I see the possibility of something real, messy, imperfect, honest. I don't know what shape it would take. I just know that when I'm with her, I don't feel like I'm leaving parts of myself at the door. And with me? She asked. With you, I feel safe, I said. And compartmentalist, which worked for a while. But now that the compartments have been opened, I don't know how to put the lids back on. She sat back, exhaled. I had hoped, she said quietly, that once the dust settled, you'd choose to stay. That you'd look at all this and think it was worth more than some old feelings. It is worth a lot, I said. But feelings aren't old. They're layered. And this isn't about choosing nostalgia over you. It's about choosing the version of myself that isn't constantly editing. She nodded slowly. Then I think we have our answer, she said. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm sorry, I said, for hurting you, for not knowing this earlier, for letting you build this with me without full disclosure. I'm sorry, she said, surprising me, for the ways I benefited from your partial self, for liking how tidy it made my life. She stood up, walked to the window. We'll talk to the solicitor, she said. Make it legal, quietly, no press statement, just an update in some registry that no one reads unless they're boring. You're not angry? I asked. Oh, I'm livid, she said lightly. At Marsh, at the council. At the world that made you so afraid you had to cut yourself in half. At myself for thinking I could live with half and call it enough. But anger isn't very useful here. We've both done the best we could with what we had. Now we're doing better. She turned back to me. I want something from you, she said. Anything, I said reflexively. Not anything, she corrected. 2 things. 1, don't disappear from my life completely. I like you. I need you on the foundation. You're irritatingly good at telling me when my ideas are stupid. I laughed, watery. Okay, I said. I can do that. 2, she said. If you and Ruth don't have to it. Don't keep one foot in this house in your head. Don't hold back because you're afraid to leave again. Either leap or don't. I can't watch you tiptoe for another 20 years. Deal, I said. We hugged, briefly, carefully. 2 adults saying goodbye to one version of their relationship and hello to something else. Go, she said, releasing me. You'll be late for your walk. And she's punctual, if I recall. She is, I said. I left the house with a lighter bag than I brought in. The ring stayed on my finger for now. Paperwork takes time. Hearts even more. By the time I reached the river, the sky had cleared a little. The water looked less like sludge, more like something that might, in a different city, be considered picturesque. Ruth was already there, of course. Hands in her coat pockets. Scarf wrapped twice around her neck. You're late, she said. I had a marriage to recalibrate, I said. It took a minute. She studied my face. Well, she asked. Well, I said, we're going to divorce. Kindly, eventually. It'll take a while. Lawyers, list, But emotionally, we've agreed it's over. The romantic part, at least. She nodded slowly. Are you okay? She asked. No, I said. And yes, both. I've just stepped off a very comfortable ledge. Well, she said, let's see if there's ground. We started walking along the river path. The city hummed around us, cyclists, joggers, families with prams. No one looked at us twice. Two older women in coats, walking slowly. Nothing remarkable. Do you want this? I asked after a while. Me, no. Not the girl you kissed under a broken umbrella. This version, with adult children and a public article and a tendency to wake at 4:00 a.m., worrying about things she can't control. Yes, she said, without drama. If you want me, not as a remedy, not as a revolution, as a person. I do, I said. Want to try at least. We'll have to be careful, she said. With each other. With ourselves. We've both accumulated a lot of brittle bits. I know, I said. We can start. Small walks, dinners, no U-Hauls. She laughed. We're too old to carry furniture upstairs anyway. She said. We walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. If it doesn't work, she said, if we find we're better as old ghosts who haunt each other kindly, that's okay too. The point is not to squeeze a fairy tale out of this. The point is to stop letting fear make the decisions. I'm bored of being afraid, I said. Me too, she replied. We reached a bench overlooking a bend in the river. Sat down. The wind was cold, but not cruel. This isn't a guarantee, I said. I can't promise you forever. I'd be suspicious if you did, she said. At our age, forever is a concept, not a timeline. I can promise you honesty, I said. No, running. If I'm scared, I'll say it. If I'm angry, I'll say that too. If I fall in love with you again, I'll say it out loud instead of letting you guess. She smiled. That's all I want, she said. The chance to choose with our eyes open for once. We sat there as the light shifted. Two women in their late 50s, early 60s, depending how we choose to report it, deciding not to let the rest of their lives be dictated by the most frightened versions of themselves. My phone buzzed. A message from Elise. Good luck. Be brave. Don't be an idiot. Then a second later, that goes for both of you. I showed it to Ruth. She laughed. I like her, she said. I do too, I said, in a different way. I hope we can keep each other, all three of us, without it turning into a circus. We're grown, Ruth said. We can handle more than one important person at a time. We stayed on the bench until the cold seeped through our coats. As we got up to leave, Ruth reached for my hand. Stopped. May I? She asked. Yes, I said. Her hand was warm, calloused. Different from what I remembered. Better, somehow. We walked back along the path, fingers intertwined. No fanfare. No music. Just the sound of the river and our footsteps. She'd married a millionaire to escape her past. I thought, slipping into that narrator voice that had been following me ever since the article. She'd built a life of glass and steel and impeccable canapes. She'd almost managed to convince herself that was enough. Then the past found her. Not to drag her back, but to offer her something else. The chance to tell the truth. To accept justice. Even delayed. To choose. Finally, not between safety and love, but between living half a life or a whole one. Love was not promised forever. Not at our age. Not at any age. What we had. That afternoon by the river was simpler. Two women. Older, bruised, still here. Two hands. Held without hiding. A choice made quietly. Without witnesses. To walk forward. Not toward a perfect ending. Just toward an honest one.